Let's talk a bit about some of the innovative work that you've done at Pennoni. I know that you help oversee their pavement and AI analysis partnership. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We use smart technology, whether it's a LiDAR system mounted to the top of a vehicle, which is advanced. And then we also use cell phones mounted to the inside of residential vehicles that just drive the speed limit. Both of these results, depending upon what we're needing them for and what our solution is, are run through an AI system that allow us to see.
Did you know that artificial intelligence is transforming municipal engineering? From optimizing infrastructure design to predicting maintenance needs, AI is really revolutionizing how cities are planned, built, and maintained. The question is, what's next for cutting-edge technology shaping our future? In this episode, I'll be talking with Megan Todaro, PE project engineer at Pennoni, about the latest advancements in innovation in AI and technology and their potential applications in the field. From predictive maintenance to smart city infrastructure, we'll dive deep into the exciting possibilities and challenges that lie ahead. I'm your host, Rebecca Swaby, and this is the Women in Engineering podcast. And with that, let's jump right into today's episode. And now let's jump right into the main segment of our episode. Today, I have with me Megan Todaro. Megan, welcome to the Women in Engineering podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
So great you're here. I was taking a look at your LinkedIn profile before this and noticed that you had interest in civil engineering, GIS, grant writing, AI, land development. And I thought, hey, we're going to get along just fine.
A little bit of everything.
Great to have you here. Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about yourself and what inspired you to pursue a career in civil engineering?
Sure. Growing up, I always had an interest in a little bit of a lot of things, which I think helps when getting into civil engineering and especially the direction I chose to go in. I know when I was in high school and I was looking at different careers, I loved the idea of watching projects progress, seeing development, watching, doing a little bit here, continuing on in a few years, and watching these projects grow into what we see on a daily basis. And I think that was really my choice into civil engineering and watching the development and progression throughout our communities.
Yeah, and that's so important too. You said communities. Like, I'm assuming these are projects that actually touch the places that you live as well too, which is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. I chose to get into municipal engineering, and between, I work in counties where I grew up as a child and worked on a playground that I played in as a child and got the chance to redevelop it and go to these parks that I grew up at and see these communities get developed even into, the neighborhoods that I grew up in now and that I live now as well.
It's so amazing. And it's such an added layer of responsibility too when you're the one guiding the decisions. And
a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I noticed you also had a master's degree as well, and I was curious what led you to choose to pursue higher education.
When I started working within the first year, my company gave me the opportunity to extend my studies, and when I was looking at master's programs, I knew if I was going to get into that, I wanted to do it while it was still very close to schooling and in that mindset of studying and homework and tests. So when I was doing my master's program, it was a great opportunity to take studies that was similar to what I was working on a daily basis and take that educational side and also that practical application of my daily work and combine them, which was, I think, a good opportunity. And I'm glad I did it when I did.
And you were studying while working, it sounds
like. I
Wow.
did.
Okay. So you weren't ever thinking, I'm just going to stay in school. Like, you always knew it was a stepping stone in your professional career.
And I don't know if this is for everybody, but when I was time for undergrad, I was like, get me out of here. I'm done. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to earn money. At a certain point, I found working kind of easier because, when you're done at 5:00, you're done, at least when you first start working. But nowadays, that's a little bit less fine line. But yeah, when I first started working, I was like, this is great. Come to work, do my work, get paid, work hard, talk, and then I'm going home. And I don't necessarily have much at night, not homeworks, tests. So I did school again.
And so it was more to be able to unlock new possibilities within your career in the engineering field. Okay, awesome. Good to know. One other fun fact I just found while doing a bit of research was your dad an entrepreneur, or did your dad own a business?
He did. When I was younger, he owned a brace company, and I got to work with him on a daily basis and worked for him for a while, actually, when I was in high school.
Okay, interesting. Because I'm an entrepreneur, so I was just really interested in that too. Was there anything that in that experience helped shape your career path or anything that you took from it that you're still applying today in your engineering work?
I think while he had a full-time job, it was kind of a smaller portion of what he did on a daily basis. And I think it was a nice, sample of applying a small portion of your job that you might have an interest in into, other forms of, enjoyment or success in work. And I think that it really supported him in what he was doing, even in his professional career as well.
Okay, amazing. So let's get into work. So, as a project engineer in the municipal division at Pennoni, what does a typical day look like in your role?
It's different every day. And
Mm.
that's exactly why I was drawn to it. Going in, I would sit in interviews and be like, thank you for this opportunity. I don't want to sit on a computer all day. It is not something that I'm interested in. I have never been that person that would be quiet. And municipal engineering is an opportunity to work within communities in various counties in my area. So I get the opportunity to attend meetings, be on phone calls about new projects, write grant applications, review various projects coming in. And my favorite part about all of that is because of my location, I get the opportunity to see redevelopment of areas that have been established for a while and also brand new development that is up and coming and, maybe a little bit more of that open space that, we don't always get the opportunity to plan ahead on. So it's every day is a little bit different, and that's exactly why I enjoy my job.
And the title, is it a appointed engineer for Chester and Delaware counties? Is that
So there's individual municipalities within those counties that we work with, but I work within Delaware and Chester County, which is the easiest way to do it because within there's 100 municipalities, and I work with probably 6 or 7 of them on a daily basis.
okay? And maybe this is a dumb question. You sort of already answered it, but I was just curious. I hadn't heard of this term before. What is an appointed engineer?
In Pennsylvania, which is where I work, a municipality has an appointed township or municipal engineer to handle all of their needs as far as reviewing plans as they come in, handling capital projects, road program projects, and then everything from a small pool that goes in, we're checking to make sure it's in compliance, and then to, those really large grocery stores that are going down the street. So we're dealing with drainage issues and structural issues and anything that could come up that you could possibly need an engineer for, we're here to assist as needed.
Okay, but technically you work for a private consulting company, but you're representing the municipalities.
Yes,
That's
we
very
are
cool.
appointed. Yes.
Yeah, okay, amazing. So in your role, how do you approach managing short-term capital projects and long-term strategic plans?
I think our short-term projects are really making sure that we're staying on schedule and that when we are awarded these projects and we're working towards our goal, everybody involved is aware of that. And that, we're saying, hey, we want to go out to bid or we want this project completed by this date. Can everybody meet those deadlines? And everybody's involved and everybody's saying yay, nay, and we need to adjust accordingly. Keeping that communication and keeping everybody on track has really been the biggest goal to succeeding in those short-term projects.
Okay, interesting. And the communication piece, it comes through very strongly. Is that something that you feel that you can bring to the table?
Absolutely. I've always been a big proponent of communication from, and I don't even mean, hey, pick up and call the phone, but just informational. Hey, by the way, I talked to this person. You should know this in case it comes up. Or, there's a lot of areas of engineering that you have to get involved. And if somebody doesn't know something or wasn't aware of it, we could answer something incorrectly or plan something that could ultimately been resolved with a simple update email. Keeping everybody in the loop just makes our jobs a lot easier. And I will say a very large portion of my job is just communicating within our teams and then also communicating to the public and these municipalities what our plans are, what's happening, what the schedule is.
Okay. And so, it sounds like when you're thinking about keeping a project on track, especially those short-term projects, there's always potential for things to go wrong. How much do you think communication factors into it from the perspective of success or, things falling apart and timelines getting delayed and so on?
Something always goes wrong. I would love to say it doesn't, and you can't always plan for it. I think setting that expectation is a real large part of that of, hey, this came up. We're trying to address it, but I just want you to know that this is happening, and not coming or not having them hear about it from somewhere else where they don't have the opportunity to react. I think that's a really large part of being courteous to your clients, but also having a plan and making them aware of it, because they might have a solution that we are not aware of, or, have the ability to assist in some way.
Yeah. Do you think that younger engineers getting into the field have an appreciation for how much communication factors into project success?
I know I definitely didn't. I was always that person, but was outgoing. I would call somebody if I needed to, or, needed to follow up with somebody. So while I didn't mind doing that, I think it's something that doesn't always come natural to engineers, or isn't necessarily even taught. And I
Mhm.
don't even think it's an engineering based something specific. I think any job and any opportunity, communication is absolutely key. And making sure that, you have those plans and they're, expressed clearly is by far, I think, the most important thing in majority of jobs and positions.
Mm. And you mentioned the public earlier too. Can you tell me a little bit about your role in interfacing with the public on some of these smaller and bigger projects that are shaping your community?
So with municipal engineering, we attend a lot of their public meetings. So we get to go tell them what our plans are, tell them what's going on. Sometimes we are having more of an open forum and saying, this is the project coming up. We would like your feedback, or we're putting it on a website. We're having it more open and taking engineering plans and making the public be able to understand them. And I think that sometimes having people have that aha moment of, oh, I get it. That's really rewarding, and especially in our positions of, we were able to successfully, portray our project and what we'd like to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you mentioned earlier you worked on things from like parks to sanitary projects. So that's a pretty big range of things that you have to engage with the public on.
Absolutely. And people have very strong opinions. I will say, I think that was by far, we can make decisions all we want, but the more you're engaging the public and they're having a say in these projects, it's really more rewarding for them at the end of the day.
I can see that for sure. Let's talk a bit about some of the innovative work that you've done at Pennoni. I know that you help oversee their pavement and AI analysis partnership. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We use smart technology, whether it's a LiDAR system mounted to the top of a vehicle, which is a lot more tech advanced. And then we also use cell phones mounted to the inside of residential vehicles that just drive the speed limit. And both of these results, depending upon what we're needing them for and what our solution is, are run through an AI system that allow us to see road results and the conditions of road paving. And while it seems super complicated, at the end of the day, majority of the time, we're getting a color-coded map that says red is really bad and green is really good. And I think while you try and explain the math behind it and the engineering and the software, they are getting this big map that shows them all the roads color-coded, and automatically it takes out that subjective point of view, and you're getting a very objective, here's your map, here's what you should do. And it has been very rewarding. And I will say multiple times I've presented this at meetings or presented it to employees, and they're like, oh, great. Or that makes so much sense. That road is so bad. Or, oh, okay, we should focus here. And it's been very rewarding to work through, especially these smaller municipalities that maybe might not have funding. It's a very affordable option depending upon what you are looking for. And the technology just keeps growing and getting better.
Well, first of all, I love maps. I love GIS. I love data. So I'm right there with you. I'd love to hear about how they were solving the problem, or how the problem was being solved before. Sounds like, pavement management, you're trying to figure out where to prioritize investment dollars to basically make
Absolutely.
sure that things are safe and the roads are maintained. How was this done in the past?
Majority of the time, it was individuals driving around saying, I think this road is worse than this road. Or there was a very complicated chart of ratings or systems. Sometimes it was public works, sometimes it was engineers. But again, it was very subjective. So and it was also expensive because it was all man hours driving around on their own time, at different times of year. Some of these municipalities we can drive within a day or two and compare it all at the same time.
Really? Wow. Okay, so it was very manual, took a long time, and everybody was doing it differently.
Everybody was doing it differently.
What might be a fun summer job, though, to drive around and fill out the
By all
sheets.
means.
That's great. Yeah. And I was just curious about the public sentiment on this project. I can imagine that pavement is one of those things that can be pretty contentious, and you might get a lot of opinions from the public on such matters. How does that factor in when you have this amazing system that can be really objective and driven by, real world data?
Absolutely. Obviously, it's at the municipality's discretion on how much they share with the public. However, multiple times I have heard of municipalities bringing it up for public eye to say, we understand your complaint. Here is the results if you want to view it. Or, hey, while we understand we have worse roads, and if you'd like to see the data that's available. We also have some municipalities that make it very public. They have dedicated websites and they share that information, and it's all viewable.
I love that.
Yeah, and they can provide feedback, or they can see the upcoming projects. So it's all depending upon what your focus in, what your budget is, and what your overall goal is. We have been able to take not just this data, but other asset management data and incorporate it into GIS and make this more of a platform. So individuals can see not just their road paving, but go beyond that and really dive into other improvements, and municipalities can start to understand all of the assets that they own and what their plans are. And I think that's a new opportunity that is still growing as I will say technology just continues to become readily available and affordable, because it really wasn't for a while.
Municipalities that have adopted new technology, what was the motivation for them? Was it an easy decision, or did this take a long time to decide they wanted to go this route?
I think majority of municipalities that have this technology, it became, ideally, it's a snowball effect. You have to start somewhere. Road paving is most of the time the easiest starting point. If they do have an established system, it's something that has grown as municipalities have come online and we're updating it to the newer standards. But a lot of times you have to start somewhere, and then you can add on this portion, and you can, add this in until you grow into, a pretty decent platform, which is really incredible to see. Some of these municipalities have so much data online, and it's so much more an abundance than what you had previously between going through electronic, oh, here's my property, here's my plan, oh, they had this permit, oh, look at the road condition in front of their house. Whereas you used to be like, well, here's the file, let's go into the basement and look for the plan. I used to hear that when I started, oh, we'll have to go to the basement and look for the plans. And
oh my goodness,
the difference nowadays is, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and the difference between when I started and even now is absolutely amazing. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like in another 10 years.
Yeah. Hopefully we don't have to go down to the basement again for that kind of thing.
I get asked a lot, do we need to keep these plans? If we'll see. We're still in that fine line of like, do you actually throw out the plans yet, or do we need to keep them in a box just in case something happens?
I remember that too, because I used to do stormwater pond assessments. You get mailed the plans, right? And then you got to mail them back. And sometimes the other consultant hadn't mailed them, so you don't have access. It's a mess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what motivated you to get involved in these innovative projects that are leveraging new technology? Was it something that just came across your desk? Was there, a motivation internally at the organization? How did these come about?
Pennoni is constantly looking at new technology, and we constantly have the opportunity introduced to us with so many startups and new plans and technology. So this was one of those options that I think even in 2017 was the first time we were introduced to something along these lines. We do a test project, we incorporate it into, our daily use and see how it applies. And it took off. I will say, when we started sharing it within the company, and, I work daily with our director of strategic growth as well. And while we saw the involvement here, we have been able to apply this application to multiple municipalities up and down the East Coast. It's not just the North where we are that have issues with road conditions. It's absolutely everywhere. So I think it's something that has grown bigger than we would have thought even in 2017.
Sounds like it's an obvious win, and others started to see it as well too.
Absolutely.
That's great. Are there any particular projects that stand out, road management projects or park improvement projects? We can go back to some of the other ones that stood out. And why did they stand out for you?
I will say, as far as road improvement projects, I think the most rewarding ones, while I've seen many of them go through, it's really been when we're presenting that data and the public, the employees, everybody kind of has that, oh, this is great. This is, it functions very similar to Google Maps. They all know how to use it. It's very user friendly. I think having that opportunity of, oh, I get it. This is easy data that, while it's very technically advanced to get to that point, is a very user-friendly result. And I think that's always very rewarding when they're like, oh, absolutely, this is great. So I think as far as a technology solution, that's always been my favorite part. As far as projects, we have one specific project that I think we've been talking about and working on since I started here.
Oh, wow.
And it's a community center park where we started with a playground and we were like, okay, let's get to working on this playground. And we got that funded through grants and we got that constructed. And then they're like, I think we want an amphitheater here. So we cut into the side and we constructed an amphitheater. And now they're building a township building on that property. And that led to traffic improvements at the beginning. And by the end, and 10 years later, you're looking at a almost fully developed park and community center. And they now host concerts and they bring in food trucks. And it's become a really community gathering center that wasn't there 10 years ago. And I think it shows exactly, we didn't plan this whole thing out, but it came together through pieces and development that was funded through different sources. And I think that's my favorite part of, what I do on a daily basis is seeing that growth and where these projects have come.
That's so interesting to me because oftentimes the work that we focus on, the project work, comes from some 10-year, 20-year strategic plan. But what you're describing here is actually maybe a little bit different than that, where it evolved more naturally. Am I understanding correctly?
Kind of. I mean, along the way, we definitely had bigger plans and we sat down and said, okay, this is what we'd like to do. But you don't sit down and say, okay, now we're going to fund a $10 million project. You're
Right.
going to start, here and then move to this one. And okay, let's get this portion funded and let's get this constructed. But oh, you have to do this project first. So that snowball effect of making sure you're doing it in order and everybody understands and can work together for those long-term projects is always really important and really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that the public benefited along the way too. Every time they saw something new come online, right? Like it builds more excitement and momentum for the work. So great.
Absolutely.
And you touched on grants. How do you feel about them?
I work with grants a lot on my daily job. And that's a great example of something I didn't even know that was an opportunity. I did not know. It was something I was introduced when I started working. And on a daily basis, I, throughout the year, submit, I think, a total of 50 to 75 grants for our municipalities working on, again, if it's a park that they want to grow, if it's a storm sewer system that needs to be replaced, or, a new building that they would like to help fund. It's understanding what they want to get done, what the goal is. And then grant writing is definitely unique and something I had to learn when I got into it, but it's been very rewarding. And it provides an opportunity to fund projects that communities wouldn't normally have the budget to introduce and put in these projects. And it definitely gives me that, giving back to the community through funding of different sources. So very rewarding and very successful, which again was not something I was expecting getting into this job.
I can imagine that. Yeah. And what kind of skills would make somebody successful in writing grants, for example? Would you say it's similar to writing an engineering proposal, or are there differences?
It's a little bit different because you have to take the technology of engineering and say, this is our master plan. This is what we're going to design. But then you have to understand that there's not engineers on the other side reviewing it. So you're taking your cost estimate and your plan and you're making sure they all match and that they understand the goal and that you're justifying why you have that need. So while engineering proposals are very technical, we're making it look a little bit prettier, putting it more as a package with a bow on top of it because they're not drilling down to the raw data. We're not always providing calculations to support it because they trust that that's our job and they're not checking it. So I think that that's been, it's a very public facing, sell sometimes, which can be controversial depending upon what your thought is on that. But I do think that it's a great opportunity for municipalities to grow their projects, and it's been a great success.
And just in general, so how have having access to grants, federal grants, state grants, local grants, influenced your ability to deliver on municipal projects?
Oh, it's been a huge opportunity. And I think municipalities have grown significantly because of these opportunities. Our goal is always to understand from municipalities and sit down and say, what are your plans? What would you like to do versus what can we get funding for? And be very honest and say, okay, we don't know if this is a great opportunity or a great project, but let's focus in on this portion. Or can we take this really big project and see if we can get just, this stormwater portion funded through grants, and understand that grants are definitely a time, you have to take that in consideration with your schedule. Depending upon the grant and the funding source, it will take months, if not almost a year, to hear back. But you're taking that chance, and you're moving forward with your project depending upon that funding.
Yeah. And with, tens going out a year, I think you said maybe as high as 50, there must be a bunch of people working on these, or is it just you?
It depends. So within Pennoni, we do have two full-time grant writers, and they help out with individuals as they request, or if there's really, really large projects. Again, when I came in, it was one of those opportunities that I could write them out of our office. We have the institutional knowledge. We have that background knowledge. So between myself and some other individuals in our office, we end up just writing them ourselves. And there is something to be said about doing the same application for, 9 different projects. There is a certain redundancy or familiarity that you get after doing so many. But I will also add, it's, the same programs are available annually. So you have a lot of samples. You have a lot of understanding after a while. You have those communication with those programs, and to understand what they're looking for, what will help you, what will not help you, giving them updates as you go to say, hey, I think that we're almost on this project. We'd like to submit for the second one. Is this something you'd be open to? Because I think that's a big part of it. We don't want to waste, our municipality's dollars to apply for a grant that isn't even feasible. So I think having that understanding and working so closely with these grants and these municipalities has been a great benefit, and something, again, that was not something on my radar when I was getting into this, but has been very successful.
That's great. And do you have any advice to other engineers looking to get their projects funded or partially funded through grants?
Don't overcomplicate it. I will say, I think people sometimes approach grants as, okay, I'm going to write a 10-page, I'm going to sell them on this. You have to remember they're reading so many grants. At the end of the day, get to the point, make sure that your scope, your plan, and your cost estimate match, and that you're getting your message across. And that will be some of the most important writing that you do.
That is great advice. What would overcomplicating it look like?
Getting into the fine details.
Too much
detail. This is why we chose those colors. This is why we did that.
Yeah.
I hate to say they don't necessarily care, but like that, they don't have a say in it at the end of the day. It's great that you've gone through that process and you've chosen those colors, but, public participation is always huge in grants, making sure, you're communicating and getting feedback from them. They want to hear that. They don't want to know that you had a meeting and you sat there and you discussed colors and this and that. You had the meeting, you got their feedback. Let's make sure that they're aware of that, but we don't need to go into a paragraph about it.
That makes a lot of sense. Great advice. Okay, so switching gears a little bit. I know you've been at Pennoni for just over 10 years now. Is that right?
Yes.
Does anything stand out from the past 10 years? Like highs and lows career-wise so far?
The fact that it is 10 years is actually crazy. I did start at Pennoni as an intern in inspection and testing, had a great opportunity to see kind of the construction side of it, which was amazing. And I think it was a great introduction to, let's see how things are done and then work on the other side to get things designed. And you have a real appreciation for what it takes to construct these projects. But when I first got into it, you learn so much just by doing this job on a daily basis. And there's so much that cannot be taught in a classroom. And I think that was some of the biggest lessons learned, that time and exposure and experience is just huge when working in this industry. And I feel like in any engineering industry, that seeing the job done on a daily basis and doing those tasks is the best experience you could have.
Yeah. Did you have any mentors that stand out for you over the years?
Multiple. Within our division, because we do represent a lot of projects, we have multiple appointed municipal engineers, and there's 3 of them that I work with on a daily basis, and all 3 of them are very different. But at the same time, I feel like I've picked and chosen certain aspects of each of them that I hope apply to all of them, and then constantly going to them with, I have this opportunity, or I have this project. What do you think? What are that? And applying what they do on a daily basis in their experience, and really learning from them, because I think it's been absolutely huge.
With these people that just, you're working alongside them, or did you actively seek out mentors in your career to complement the work that you're doing?
I think a combination of both. I think those 3 came naturally just because of my daily job, and you kind of find your niche on what your works, who you're working with, what you're doing on a daily basis. And then as far as seeking others out, I feel like there was a moment in which, okay, maybe I need to talk to another female in engineering. And that was a great opportunity to say, hey, what was your job like? Or what was that opportunity? And it might not have been within the company. It was a networking event or, a community event that you got to speak to. And I think that always helps, maybe it's not a constant conversation or it's not a let's meet every month and have this conversation, but I would like to see what your experience was like 10 years in versus what you're doing right now. So I think that was really important for me to understand too, that I entered a male dominated field and I wanted to understand what somebody else was experiencing and if it was like that everywhere, which I think was really important as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I can see that you've been a strong advocate for other women in the field, including there was an article that came out recently on the Engineering Management Institute website called Soundtrack to Success, a playlist for women in engineering. I thought that was very cool. So it had a bunch of different themes and a song for each one. What a
Yes,
creative
that was
idea.
a lot of fun to write up. And it really got me to make me think about like, okay, what would I recommend and what have I been saying? And, you do your job on a daily basis, but how do I portray and what do I want to think about and what other people to think about as well?
And in this article, you touched on resilience, you touched on confidence. How do you apply these qualities in your day-to-day life and personal life?
I think my big thing was not changing who I am. When I came in, I was very strong. I had my interests. I knew what I liked and didn't like, and I was able to stand up for that. And I was able to find ways that I was able to incorporate what I was interested in into my job and say, "Hey, I really enjoy this. Can I do more of this?" Or work extra hard or even overtime to say, "Can we apply this here?" and find what I was good at. And I think standing up for yourself and not getting, pushed down or pushed into a position that wasn't what you were looking for really was really important to me because I knew if I got to that point, I wasn't going to stay. I knew that wasn't, who I was. But like I said, I've also always been very outspoken and said my mind, and I have said it here, and everybody knows that. I will tell you what I think, and standing up for yourself and communicating that is very important.
So you've always had that sense, and it sounds like, knowing to lean into the things that you like, the things that you're curious about has always been an important part of your career journey.
Absolutely. And I will touch again on that communication, making sure, there were times when I was communicating in a, hey, I'm not enjoying this, or I'm not, this isn't what I really want to be doing, and making sure that that's understood, again, always very important, especially, whether you're a female in engineering or just any young employee. I think it's important.
I mean, it's one thing to speak up, but the fact that if it falls on ears of somebody who's willing to help you and support you versus maybe somebody who's not willing to listen, have you ever run into a situation where you've said your piece and maybe nothing changes? Do you have any advice for other engineers in that situation?
I will say, I have been very fortunate where all of my opinions have been taken very seriously. And if I have raised something that was, something of concern, it has seriously been addressed. So I can't speak to that, but I will say, as far as my experience goes, coming with your understanding of what you want and making sure that if it's something that consistently, if it's not happening or you're not getting that result, it might be time to make a change. And I think that that's really important, to take that step back and look at your bigger picture and be like, this is not what I want. This is not good for me. And respect that that's okay to make that change. I think that's really important to recognize.
The fact that, you were generally listened to and things were taken seriously is probably part of the reason why you've been there for 10 years, I'm assuming, eh? So other companies should take note of that, or the managers. Great. And I just want to talk about volunteering for a minute. So what role has volunteering and staying connected with your alma mater played into shaping your career and personal growth?
I think, so I spend a lot of time doing mentoring events through the colleges that I graduated from, and then also getting involved in some of, more of my high school volunteer time. But I will say some of the most beneficial time I've spent is in mentoring events with college age engineering students. And first hearing them, you learn a lot from what they're interested in and how they're operating on a daily basis. But I also think staying involved with students that are coming into the field and making sure they're aware of the opportunities that are out there, sharing with them, hey, this is what I do on a daily basis. And a lot of them being like, I didn't even know that was an option, or I didn't know this field could lead to this, or engineering is so broad and you can do so much with an engineering degree. And I want students to know that. So I think having those opportunities to share your experience and introduce them to opportunities, making sure that they're interested as well, and staying involved in the career. And that's how you get some good engineers, and hopefully hire them on as well for grad engineers.
Absolutely. That's great. Okay. And what final piece of advice can you share with other young women engineers on how to adapt and thrive in a field that especially is being transformed by advancements in AI, like what we talked about, new technologies in general, or just any piece of advice that you want to share?
First off, find out what you're interested in. There's the job opportunities when you come out of school. There are so many companies that focus so directly on one thing, and there's ones that are really broad. And make sure you find what you're interested in. And don't be afraid to, okay, if I start a job and let me get this experience. That experience is your best source of work and figuring out what you do and don't like. Start somewhere and don't be afraid to change it up. While I don't do what I came into Pennoni doing on a daily basis, I was able to, communicate with others and get that experience to, position myself in a way that I do enjoy what I do on a daily basis and the tasks that I complete. So, and then communication, just good, bad, all of it. Keep everybody informed, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone, talk to somebody you haven't talked to before, and just introduce yourself.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that advice. This has been so nice to chat with you and learn about your experience. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It was a great conversation.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss upcoming episodes featuring interviews with inspiring women engineers, discussions about industry trends, and so much more. Go to womenandengineeringpodcast.com, where you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, may your engineering endeavors be as remarkable as the women whose stories we're sharing. Stay curious, keep innovating, and engineer a better future.